interested in our musical.
I'm not sure that she is. And we needn't concern ourselves with amateurs. But there is no harm in making certain that Gabriella is welcome into school activities that are, well, appropriate for her. After all, she loves pie.
Oh, yeah, man. That's a classic right there. High School Musical. Sharpay Evans is here, ladies and gentlemen. The one and only Ashley Tisdale. Yay! She's back. Y'all was looking at, how you been first and foremost?
I'm good.
How you doing?
I'm good.
It's always good to see you.
Good to see you.
I love when you're here. I feel happy when you're here.
Oh, thank you.
Always a good time, you know. And then we were looking at some of your list of accomplishments. DB, you want to run? And I was like, what a tremendous career this woman has had to be so young. So I'm looking at like High School Musical, Whisper of the Heart, Bring It On.
Donnie Darko.
That was your joint. Aliens in the Attic.
Scary Movie 5.
Saving Santa. Play It Cool. Amateur Night.
Charmed.
Okay.
Oh, man.
All right. The mayor of Oyster Bay. You cannot forget the mayor of Oyster Bay, damn it.
And she got a poppin' ass YouTube.
Her YouTube channel.
Oh, man.
Ashley Tisdale is
I
here.
love how some of the stuff you said has never made it to the air.
But you know, but in it all, you would never know that you were so accomplished because you're one of the most approachable people on the planet.
Oh, thank you.
You've always been so nice, and now you're back. Now you're on this side of the mic. You're going back to one of your original passions, singing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since you put out a real complete project, right?
Yeah, since 2009.
Since 2009, and now you're back. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm really ready. I'm excited.
You excited?
Yeah.
You seem nervous about it.
I just am like, it's more like scary because it's so personal.
Okay.
I co-wrote every single song on the album, and it's an upbeat pop electronic album, but it really deals with my journey through anxiety and depression.
Through anxiety and depression. And we were sitting there talking like earlier, Tracy and I was thinking, you know, when I see Ashley Tisdale, I always see her on the carpets, or I see her at the movie premieres, or I see her in these big events, and she's always happy, and that's the professionalism that she carries. But I wonder what goes on in between time.
Yeah.
Like, has Ashley Tisdale ever entered a dark place during all this process? Because to even be in the world of entertainment, it's a lot of rejection, it's a lot of judgment, it's a whole lot of things that come at you all times. Social media. Yeah. You've been doing this from an early age. Did you have dark places early on?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that it's just kind of, you know, I became more aware of, I've always had anxiety my whole life.
Okay.
I became more aware of it over the last 2 years, and it was kind of debilitating. I'd be like having kind of inner panic attacks in meetings. And so, but then I did this like self-help book, and it really showed that, oh, I have actually had depression at times, you know, because I think I just wasn't really aware of it. But I think, yeah, it's like, you know, it's this business is a tough business, but I think that also like kind of live in a dark world, you know, and so it gets heavy. And so I just think for me, like, what I learned through my journey and like what this record is about is that, you know, just be your own light and like get yourself through that. And I think that is like really important to start the conversations, because I feel, you know, I'll be out with my friends and like we'll all have kind of like deep, meaningful conversations, and we'll all talk about like, you know, everybody's like, who suffers from anxiety? And we'll be like raising our hands. But when you say like, okay, so who suffers from depression? Like nobody wants to raise their hand. And even to the point where like my girlfriend was like, I heard you're putting out a record. I was like, yeah, it's about like, you know, my journey with anxiety. And she was like, oh yeah. And I was like, and depression. She's like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm okay. I was like, but it's like anxiety is just as bad as depression. And it's just like, I feel if we can just start talking about it more and like, you know, take the power out of that word depression, I just feel like it'll help so many more people. And that's really kind of like what got me back in the studio. And, you know, I've been in and out of the studio trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then once I got into John Feldman's studio, my first song that I co-wrote was Symptoms, which is the title of the album. And I was like, okay, I know where this is. I know what I'm doing now. I know what I'm like meant to do. So
when you say friends, was Vanessa, I know Vanessa's a good friend of yours as well. Did she express these sort of like similar situations she was going through at all? Or
no, not really. I guess I don't really talk, like she just actually realized that I had gone through. Like she didn't even know this part.
So
about
you kept
me.
it to yourself. What about family? And
my husband and my family, like they know. And my husband's been such a rock and been so supportive throughout it all. But yeah, a lot of people, maybe one girlfriend of mine knows about kind of like what I'd gone through. But I think that's what happens is like you isolate yourself and you don't really talk about those things. So it's kind of interesting.
Is there something that, like, I think when you hear depression and anxiety, those who are listening think, okay, well, what caused it? But does it necessarily have to be something to cause it to experience it? Like,
yeah, I think that maybe the only thing, I don't know if there's one specific thing that caused it, but I would say like when I was doing this kind of self-help book, like it talks about perfectionism, and I am definitely like a little OCD and like a little like, it's the pressure of like when I would go to perform in 2009 with with my album, I would have a panic attack before going out because I was so scared. What if something goes wrong? What if I mess up? What if I'm not perfect? And it's like I just had this pressure of being perfect for people, and I was just like, I started to realize like it's okay. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was just like maybe the pressure caused a lot of it, but and then just trying to keep up with what like the perspective of what people had about me, and being like, oh yeah, I'm like that girl from Disney, and like I just think that this is the first time where like my fans are actually going to get to know me for who I am because I'm sharing so much. I just kept so much stuff private and personal, and like I think one of the moments that when we were done with the record, I'm like, I really hope I'm not, I hope I'm not letting people down, but at the same time I'm like, but I got to let go of that.
You got to let that go. That's a part of the anxiety, right?
Yes.
You going back to the same.
That's the voice in my head.
That's the voice, hence the title of the single.
Yeah. Ashley, I'm wondering, outside of music, what else serves as therapy for you? And do you remember the title of that self-help book?
Yeah, it's called Attacking Anxiety and Depression. It's by Lucinda Bassett. It's a really, really old book, to be honest. I found it from my makeup artist on a CBS pilot I had done recently, and she told me about it. And it's really cool because it's actually, out of all the books I've really done, it's been the one that's been the most helpful. And what it's done is that compared to other things, it's that it's like you acknowledge your anxiety,
right?
Instead of like pushing it down and being like, oh gosh, here comes that feeling, and then suddenly it spirals into like, I'm feeling so weird, and like I'm like shaking, and like what's this, and you freak out, and then it continues into a panic attack. It actually like stops that from happening. Yeah. And you acknowledge it, and then it like kind of goes away.
I do the same thing. It's like befriending it.
Yeah.
I just think of it as like a very overprotective parent.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I've just been like, that one's been so helpful, and like talks about fear of failure, and like how that was a big thing for me. Like I think I didn't go into the studio based off of kind of my last experience with my album for some reason, and I just was like so scared. And then finally when it came across this chapter, there was like, there's no such thing as failure. Everybody goes through ups and downs, and to let go of that fear, I like literally was able to just be creative and do what I want to do. I was like keeping myself like from not doing something based off of the fear. And once I let go of it, I was like, oh man, I can like do whatever I want.
Do whatever you want.
So perspective is your superpower.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ashley Tisdale is here. We're talking about our new project. New single is called Voices in My Head. The project is called Symptoms. DB?
Yeah, so whenever you're a celebrity and you're dealing with anything from anxiety or depression or the other issues that may be out there, there's the pressure of working through it even though you're not ready to deal with performing or acting or whatever your obligation is. And sometimes people put the pressure of like, oh, well, you have a contract, you have a deadline, you have to make sure this movie comes out at this time. How important is it to take the time off and do what you need to do to get healthy, whether it's mentally or physically, so that you can come back and not have to worry about all that stuff in the background?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the most important thing. You have to be healthy and you have to be in a good state to be able to do this stuff. I mean, I was really going through it as I was doing this pilot this last year, and it was because I had a lot of stress on me. I'd just taken over my makeup line, Illuminate Cosmetics, and really took over. It's like a startup. So it's like, if you guys know what fundraising and all of that stuff is like, it is so stressful. And I mean, I was like having insomnia the entire week I was shooting this pilot, and I was just like, what is going on with me? And I didn't know what's wrong with me. And so then that's when I like turned to this book, and I was like, I really, for me, I meditate every single morning, and you just like, that's the only way to be your best self. And to, I think that it's just the most important thing in your life. Like you have to have a good state of mind for everything.
Ashley Tisdale is here. When you told me, when I read that you co-wrote all the songs on the project, I started digging into some of the songs, and then I said, let me focus on the single because we do this thing called Lyrical Breakdown. And since we're talking to you as a singer today, you know, normally you're twerking for us or something. We're not going to do that today.
No twerking today.
Okay, yeah, she's married now. I don't know.
Sorry, yo.
It probably the twerking that got her the marriage, you know.
I was just dating him at that time.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, he sealed the deal.
He saw the video.
Okay, good. Tell him don't worry about it. Don't mention it. You got a song called Voices in My Head. I want to do what we call Lyrical Breakdown.
I don't get it. What exactly don't you get?
Breaking down the lyrics you may not understand.
What the hell did you just say?
It's the Lyrical Breakdown.
I can break it down like whatever you want.
On Sway in the Morning.
Okay, so what we do is we go over the lyrics, and I try to find out where were you at mentally when you actually wrote these lines or solidified these lines. So in the first verse, it goes, I got these feelings I try to bury down, but they keep screaming. What is that? How does that feel? What does that mean?
You know, this specific song is based off of an experience that I had around New Year's. And it's one of those things where, you know, well, like you just witnessed, the voices of like negative thoughts and like self-doubt. Just kind of like, it was an experience that I'm not going to tell you the whole story because my husband would not be too happy about it. Okay. But it was one of those things where I was just like, you know, I kind of let that drive the conversation and the situation, and I had to realize like I have to stop letting those negative thoughts and like self-doubt get in the way, you know, because they can sometimes like can I say fuck?
Let's see what happens when you do it. I mean, you say it in the chorus.
Can I say that?
Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I think that's like, it can just like mess you up.
It can mess you up. Okay.
And mess up the situation.
And mess up the situation without actually telling us the situation. She's doing really good. Just trying to filter out somehow, but they don't want to leave. We're talking about those feelings that keep screaming. No, you don't need it. All the jealousy and ugly feelings.
Yeah.
You were experiencing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, sometimes, most of the time, I would say I assume a lot. Okay. You know, you assume, you get jealous, and it's like one of those things. I think there's a book called The Four Agreements, which it's like, don't assume. Amazing book. I do the other. It's an amazing book. I love it. It really helped me stop assuming. But sometimes, you know, like, it just naturally goes back to that. And, you know, in my past relationships with I've been through painful relationships with exes that have done some shitty stuff to me. So I think it fueled the assumptions. And so, you know, I think that, you know, sometimes your past can like mess you up a little bit.
You know, and I'm glad you're sharing this because people will look at Ashley Tisdale and think, oh, nah, man, the life got to be perfect. Nobody's screwing up on Ashley Tisdale. You know, they're not cheating on her. She's not going through these things. So to hear you express it, like I think a lot of folks can appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into that chorus. All the voices in my head always try to break me, fuck me up and change me, but talk is cheap. Did it feel liberating to put fuck in your lyric?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, oh, we need to put fuck in the lyric.
Yeah.
It was just like,
this looks like a good place to put a fuck.
This looks like a good place to put a fuck. But I think it was just like me just like releasing, being like, it really does fuck me up in the situations. And it could potentially fuck a lot of things up in my relationship. And so, you know, my husband is such a steady and solid dude that it's just like, I'm a very emotional person. And so I just like, you know, like I said, sometimes let those kind of things lead, the voices lead. And I just like have to remember like, he doesn't deserve it sometimes. And I'm like, oh man, I can't let that stuff from my past interrupt what's so great, you know, with
so
my
great right
relationship.
now.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And when we're fighting, verse 2, they get in the way and start a fire, but you never let us burn away. You got me figured out. That's him?
That's him. That's definitely him.
Nice.
That is him to
say his name. You just can't call
Christopher French.
There you go, man. Okay.
Great
got some credit.
He got a name, man. It's not just a husband or a him.
Give him identity.
Yeah, no, Chris is like, he definitely, he's such a solid person. I think when people know us, they're like, oh, he really like grounds you.
Yeah.
You know, and so he's good at like getting me through what I've been through, and like he totally gets me. He knew me from the very start. He saw it, and he just like knows how to like, when those things flare up.
He knows
really
how to
good
cope.
at like, yeah.
I really appreciate you stopping by, Ashley. And this
Yeah,
is
thank you.
it's a whole different conversation this time around.
I know.
I can't wait to hear the rest of the album.
I'm excited.
Voices in My Head is out now. When is Symptoms coming out?
The next single will come out in January, and Symptoms will come out early next year.
Okay, and we're going to talk about everything in that album, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
Damn.
Everything.
Even the threesomes?
Dummies. Threesomes are stressful.
Ashley Tisdale, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Thank you.
And we're going to play the single right now. This is Voices in My Head. And up next, we got
these feelings. I try to bear it down, but they keep screaming.